Well, hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to another special Love Your Neighbor Sunday community partner conversation, where we're just wanting to be intentional about using this time and space on Love Your Neighbor Sunday, not just to go out and find ways to love and serve our neighbors in real and tangible ways, but for us to also just take on a posture as a community of listening and learning, so that God might continue to challenge us, to grow us, to expand our understanding and our imagination of what it means to love our neighbor well. And so if you are new to this experience, welcome on Love Your Neighbor Sunday. We've just been so privileged to have some really, really great conversations with different organizations, individuals who are on the ground, on the front line, so to speak, loving and serving their communities in very real and practical and tangible ways, even as we find ourselves still in this pandemic. And so today, I'm super, super excited to have with us our special guest this morning, Randy Eng, who is the Executive Director of Jubilee Reach, a local nonprofit based here in Bellevue, Washington. Randy, thanks so much for just taking time and being with us this morning.
Royce, I am super duper honored that you would even have me here. Appreciate the partnership, appreciate you as a brother in Christ and just a dear friend. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this is special on a number of levels, really, right? For one, we go way back, right? Way back to our Lighthouse days. And I think a lot of folks don't know this, but when we were actually getting ready to plant our church, I think Lighthouse had tasked you on their, church planting committee. I think you were like an acting consultant. And I remember we had so many late night conversations. I still remember sitting in your living room, right? And you were just providing wisdom and insight and advice as we are kind of venturing out to embark on this. So obviously it's crazy to think that, we've come full circle and here we are having this conversation. And now you really at the helm of Jubilee Reach, which has been a longtime partner of Common Good. And I think this is just incredible that we get to have this conversation. And so this is special.
Yeah, this is pure joy for me. And just to see what God has done. We were sitting in my living room and wherever we were at the time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't just one session with just a bunch of paper and nice pictures and whiteboard kind of thingies. And then God took it and he took you and your partners and it's just amazing. And congratulations and more to come. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, I love this because I think this is really a continuation of the partnership that has already kind of been at work. And I'm just excited for the opportunity for folks that are tuning in and listening in to kind of just get a little bit more of a behind the scenes peek at kind of Jubilee Reach and what happens. And I think really the pertinent conversation, especially here on Love Your Neighbor Sunday, and we'll kind of drill into this a little bit. But to kind of even hear from your standpoint, right, as the executive director who's leading this organization, kind of how faith informs the work that you do on a day-to-day basis, and how faith informs kind of your perspective and understanding of what it really means to love our neighbor. And so I think if you're good with it, let's just jump right in.
Good, yeah.
Maybe we could start, and I know this, asking this question can be challenging at times, but maybe we could start with just kind of the high level overview of Jubilee Reach. What does your organization do? Who do you serve? What are some of the primary needs of those in the communities that you serve? And I don't know if it makes sense, we can maybe get into this a little bit later, but I know you've got the 4 pillars of Jubilee Reach. Maybe you can even kind of unpack a little bit of that. So yeah, let's start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be super brief because there are so many different things that we do under the covers and at different levels in the organization. But just at a real basic level, we're a 501c3 independent faith-based Christian organization. Okay, the Reach in Jubilee Reach is actually an acronym: relationship, education. A is assistance, C is community, and H is hospitality. A Jubilee actually stands for a celebration. It represents a celebration that a church that started this whole thing up in their 50th anniversary really attached to this independent organization. So that's the Jubilee and the Reach. And so, right now we kind of organize all the services and offerings to the community into these 4 pillars that you mentioned, Royce. And the first pillar is our Jubilee Reach Center. And we're located where I am, actually, in the Lake Hills community in Bellevue. We have, this place is bursting at the seams with activity. We call it a hub of hospitality. From a Christian perspective, it really means a love of strangers. That's simply what it means. This place belongs to the community. And today we have a bunch of adult learners in the building right now, acquiring English as their second language. I think they're representing about 20-something countries. And we have volunteer teachers and staff that are just loving on them in that way. Before they came, we had students from the elementary school that's about a block and a half that way, dropped off here, warm breakfast, enrichment. You know, we say grace before breakfast, and we just love on them. And then they get on the walking school bus, which is our staff walks them a block and a half to the elementary school. Wow. And so they were here before the ESL folks were here. They're going to come back after school, and we're going to prepare them another meal and do more enrichment activities with them. Later on this evening, there are going to be evening ESL classes for people that can't make it during the day. Throughout the course of this day, we have a pregnancy care center. We have a licensed medical facility providing free care. All of the services that we provide here are free. This is a partnership that just started about 3 years ago, where it's another Christian organization. We have actually an ultrasound unit on there. We have RNs. We have all kinds of counseling and support services for folks in this community or anywhere for that matter that need that kind of support, including things like, after the baby's born, if there was an abortion, it's abortion recovery services. That happens here, and it's a true partnership where we provide utilities, no rent for them. They could use our classrooms, offices to perform whatever kind of services they want to in partnership with Jubilee Reach. We also provide different financial supports and referrals to other organizations. And so we have community care specialists and coordinators and folks like that work out of here. Legal support, we partner with a legal program because there are a lot of folks that, frankly, don't want to go downtown and go into those sterile office buildings, and they want to stay, in their neighborhood and go to a place that they feel familiar with. We use this property also as a pop-up clinic for vaccinations, where we can have our own Spanish-speaking staff explain to the folks here, what it means to be vaccinated, the science behind it and all that stuff, to help them make a decision. Not to push them one way or the other, but this is a safe place for many people in this community. So a lot of interesting, amazing things happen here. We actually, since I've been here, there have been 2 churches that have actually launched from this center. So it's been really fun to see that. And we have a church that meets here on the weekend, which is a 3rd church, not one of the 2 that have actually launched here. So it's just, a really big part. We call it our first pillar, our Jubilee Reach Center. Our second of the 4 pillars is what we call Jubilee Reach in the schools. And we have just an amazing relationship with the Bellevue School District. It's kind of indescribable. We could write a book about it, but nonetheless, we have staff, full-time staff in the Bellevue Public Schools, providing community opportunities, experiences, clubs, activities, athletics, with no cost, and everyone's invited. So this idea of no barriers, to this kind of idea of how can we get a sense of community in the schools? How can we create a sense of belonging in the souls of these kiddos that are just pummeled with all of these other messages and all of these other challenges as they kind of make their way. This is a district that has that has kiddos from about 90 countries, and where over 100 languages are spoken in the schools, just to give you an idea. A school district where about 20 to 25% of the kids are classically defined as being at risk, and where there are a lot of issues related to not just financial poverty, but spiritual poverty. There are huge dynamics going on in the schools right now, and very, very high levels of concerns around depression and self-harming and all of those things that might come up later. But we're blessed to be in the schools, and that's our second pillar. We're in 15 schools, and about 25 students a year will be enrolled and registered for Jubilee Reach activities. Strategically, I might talk a little bit more about what the impact is, but that's our second pillar. Our third pillar is our Jubilee Reach thrift store. You might know just a little bit about that special place because Common Good Church makes it really special. We have that as a missional business, and we use that as an opportunity to just welcome people that may have a hard time finding employment, that may have a hard time receiving, just training and occupational experience. We also partner with Bellevue Probation Services and 2 school districts, disability departments and all that stuff. So it's basically it's a hub of hospitality in the missional business world, where we're open for business. We receive donations. We're really after shoes and coats and housewares and blankets. If anyone is interested, the back door is right there. There's a picture of your parents, Royce, with me at the back door as they were dropping off stuff from our newsletter a couple months ago. But that's a very, very special business. And ministry. We operate the only furniture bank that, again, Common Good is very aware of on the Eastside, where we provide families coming out of homelessness with furniture and housewares, and we deliver and we set them up just to help them, come out of that situation. So vouchers, for clothing and all that stuff also come out of our center here and go to families so that they can go get that stuff at the thrift store. So it's our third pillar, and we're super ridiculously excited about what happens there. Our fourth pillar are community building events. And now, if more than any time that I've experienced is a time for us to experience community. And we're really grateful that we have this pillar where we're focused on building community. We do that through service events like Jubilee Service Day, where we're kind of like the logistical support and just a gatherer of about 50 plus or minus churches every year that go into our schools, Bellevue Public Schools and Issaquah schools in the Bellevue area. And we help about 450 teachers get their classrooms ready, and we help the principals with whatever they need to set up their facilities to welcome kids. And it's our way of really inviting God's church, to love on this community and to experience community. At any one of these schools, there are about 150 to 200 people representing about 4 or 5 churches. So, it's just a beautiful, beautiful expression of God's love and community, kind of heaven on earth. We do that for the schools. We also have about 50 small micro events where we're serving homeowners that are distressed. Their lives get distressed. And so you can see that the paint is peeling. You can't see the house behind the sticker bushes. There's a driveway there. Really, there's so much stuff. You couldn't even tell that you could park a car there. Well, we partner with the city of Bellevue, and we do this program together where we identify homes and homeowners that are in distress, and we engage them. And we gather and invite teams of folks to do projects at these homes to meet them where they are. And we tell people as they come into the lives of these homeowners, spend 5 minutes talking to them. that means way more than 20 minutes pushing a rake in their yard. And so we do those kinds of things, or the community does, and we're just a part of that about 50 times a year.
Wow.
We have, other events and stuff. Or we have a gala coming up next month where everyone from, elected officials to those that we were called to love and serve in different ways gather, in the Hyatt Regency, and we share stories and we celebrate and we try to usher in the Christmas season as a community that's bonded together by the love of community.
Yeah.
So
good.
And I know, Royce, you've been a part of that and all that, but community building events is always evolving because we want to be spirit led around here, right? So there are lots of different things that just kind of pop up year to year, but that's our fourth pillar. So we have the center, we have the Jubilee Reach in the schools, we have the thrift store, and then we have our community building events. And that keeps us fairly engaged and involved about 365 days a year. So that's the Main Street kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, incredible. So expansive. You know what I think is so mind-blowing, and maybe you could touch on this a little bit, is when I think about Bellevue, or when people think about places like Bellevue or the East Side in general, I think there's this notion that the East Side is a very affluent place, very privileged, highly educated. I mean, you've got, big tech companies that are right there in kind of the downtown Bellevue area. And what I'm hearing from you is there evidently is needs in Bellevue because you're leading an organization that is doing so much in the community. Maybe you can just, I don't know, kind of paint that. And I know you touched a little bit about that, even in terms of when you're kind of speaking to things that were happening, dynamics within schools, but just for our listeners and those who are, serving on the East Side, maybe you can just touch on that a little bit. Like, what is kind of the picture in the landscape that you're seeing in Bellevue, and kind of really where so much of the work that you're doing is kind of responding right to those needs?
Yeah, there are immense needs in this city, and it's like there's this veil over the city. There's this veil of cranes and shiny buildings, and
right.
I think the two richest people in the whole world, live in Bellevue. And there's so much of the world's wealth, not just the wealth in the United States, but there's so much of the world's wealth that's concentrated in Bellevue. It's staggering. It's absolutely staggering. So there's this veil of all of this and all the innovation that springs out of this place, and how it attracts the smartest and brightest people from the world. And now people from Seattle are coming this way because, there's some struggles there, and there are great ministries over there doing great things too. But it's this whole shiny thing on the hill that's going on. You don't have to look too far under the covers to see the immense poverty. There's financial poverty, as I mentioned. There's immense spiritual poverty. The sense of belonging here for the people of the city is probably at an all-time low right now. And there's this opportunity gap that is growing by the day, to where you have the most wealthiest people getting wealthier faster. And then you have those that are not participating in that are here for the service jobs, that are here for the same reasons that our grandparents and parents, I'll just say for me, my parents, my dad and my mom's parents came to this country. They're here for those same reasons, but the gap is so immense. The cost of living is so immense that they're losing ground so very quickly. And they're holding on because they can get a great education here for their children, right? There's a great promise that the city offers because of that. So it's really, when something before COVID happened, it was staggering to see this undercurrent of poverty here, financial poverty all by itself, and how the vulnerable just keep getting more vulnerable. And then this real spiritual poverty, to where there's so many kids and families that are just broken because they're chasing these idols. They're chasing these opportunities, and they're pursuing them, but they're not a family unit. But the children are not receiving time and attention and care and love, and it's just an immense challenge. And when they're in the schools and they're trying to succeed in their jobs, the stress is so immense, it's crippling. The standards are really high. They're really high from the worldly perspective, and people's souls are suffering because of that. And so I have a view into that, because we're in the schools and we're in this community to serve whomever God puts in front of us, right?
Yeah.
Typically, they're impoverished, so there's a spiritual poverty as well as a financial poverty. But don't get me wrong, we're loving on and caring for many people that aren't financially poor.
Yeah.
But they're very, very spiritually poor.
Right.
So the numbers are incredible. We can talk about our COVID response and what it revealed and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of challenge in this particular city. I co-chair this superintendent's council. We just started our second term and kicked it off last week, the superintendent for the school district. And during the COVID, height of COVID, we're meeting, and we recommended investments of about $10 million into medical health, our mental health action teams and interventionists and recovery staff and even nurses to go into the schools to help students as they come back, to help families as they recover from what they're going through. And what we found out as they're doing their work, as they did their work towards the end of 2019 and as they start 2021, and as they started their work in 2021-2022 school year, which just started, that about 40% of the kids that they've engaged thus far, which is about, I think, 5,000, are in a depressed state. And there's a significant number of them, and I can't share all these numbers because they're not really publicly available yet, but a significant number of them had action plans written for them on the spot. And a significant number of them were actually admitted to the hospital when they were going through this process. Yeah. This town, has it has a lot of stuff going on. It's broken and it needs the light of Christ to shine in it. And so, yeah, sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but there's a lot under the covers. You just lift it up a little bit, and you can see.
Wow, that's really helpful. I appreciate you sharing that. And you touched on, COVID, the pandemic, the disparities that already existed within the city prior to pandemic. And I think the pandemic in so many ways, not just here in our city, but around the world, right? I think really shined a spotlight on those disparities that exist and have already existed. Maybe you could talk about, because I know, one of the things that the pandemic forced a lot of folks to have to do, especially those who are leading organizations, companies, especially those in kind of human services. There was a lot of pivoting that had to happen. We had to pivot as a church, right? Where
Absolutely.
We're going now from in-person to completely virtual and online. Talk a little bit about kind of the journey that Jubilee went on. And I know we as a church were really blessed to be able to partner with you all in that work. But talk about the pivoting that had to happen at Jubilee Reach. What were the needs that happened that kind of bubbled to the surface when the pandemic hit? And what was your response?
Well, I would say this first. I think that as an organization, we might have received too much credit for this whole pivoting thing that happened. Really, it was just us staying close to those that we felt God was calling us to love and serve. And so in late February, when it's almost 2 years now, if you think about it, but in late February of that particular year, we're hearing, we're so closely knitted to the city, and the staff, the council and all that, and to the school district, that, there's an outside chance of us having to close the schools and shut down services and all that stuff. What would your response be? And so I'm like, gosh, I have to speak on behalf of the organization. What am I going to tell them? And I thought for just a second, and I said, I can't tell you what the response is going to be, but I can tell you that we're going to be here. I can tell you that, we're going to use whatever resources that we have at our disposal to serve the need of those people that come to us.
That's good.
And, it was, I don't know where those words came from, other than the fact that I know that we're partnered with amazing churches, and we have supports beyond the walls of our organization. And the Spirit is just guiding us, to be with these families. So that's all I knew at the time. So as the weeks kind of started to unfold, it's like, oh man, this stuff could really happen. It was really easy for me to say that when everything still kind of looked normal. And we didn't know that they were actually going to force businesses to close and all that kind of stuff, right? Offices to shut down. Yeah. So when the weeks unfolded, we reached out to our families and we said, starting with these families in our before and after school, so 40 families, let's say, right? Mm. What are you concerned about? Food, childcare, shelter. What is on your heart? Some of, most of them we could just catch when they're coming in now, but we formally surveyed them so we can capture the responses, stuck them in a spreadsheet because, that's how we are. And they told us, that, we've already lost our job, or my hours got cut. This was in early March, right? Yeah. Don't want to know what we would do, and food on the table, all that kind of stuff. And so right about the time where we were hearing that, and our hearts were really kind of bending and opening up in that way. So we're not just in this mode that we've been in. I started getting, a couple taps from a church or two. So there was a church, a Crossroads Bible Church, that just called me out of the blue. We have a relationship with them, but hey, Randy, we 2 months ago we bought 2 pallets of beans and 2 pallets of rice. We thought it'd be like maybe a disaster recovery thing for our church, but we're not sure. Can you guys use it? I said, yeah, absolutely. Well, what are you guys doing for the response? I said, well, what do you think? Do you have any thoughts? Because, we have this is what we're hearing. So we started that conversation with them, and we came up with this idea of maybe, have families come in and pick up a warm meal and a bag of groceries, that kind of thing. So had talked to them, had talked to another church, and it was probably about 3 days after that. And I was in the Jubilee Reach truck in front of my house, picking up an armoire that we we're going to take to the thrift store to donate. And I got a call from this guy. His name was Royce. And I'm standing literally on the back of our truck on the lift gate and talking to Royce. I think it was on a Saturday, Royce. And you're like, hey, Randy, what do you guys, we should be doing something. What are you guys doing? And then we had a conversation. I don't know if you remember that, but we had a conversation, and I came back to the center on Monday and I said, Ken, we're going to do something. I have a genesis of an idea. And it was because just a couple of churches, and Common Good Church was one of the 3 churches that got us going on this thing, which became Groceries for Families. COVID affected all of our ministries, and it allowed us to spin up different ministries. We had to close our thrift store and lose 2 months of revenue, which really hurt us bad. But we decided to keep it open for shoppers that needed free items. Mm-hmm. So by appointment, we kept it open so that we can let people in the store so they could get stuff for free.
Love it.
And we also kept it open to receive donations in case people wanted to drop stuff off, because we figured depending on the demand, we might run out of stuff. So interesting things happen. Like we're not getting any revenue, but we're having these like private shopping sessions for people. Hopefully the back door will be busy enough so that the store doesn't empty out. But God blessed it all, right? Wow. God blessed it all. So it was all of our events, got affected. we had to shut down one of our revenue events, our spring event. So we had no money coming in from our thrift store, no money coming in from our spring event, which would have been April, right? Everything shut down in March.
Yeah.
But man, God blessed it. God blessed it. Praise God for Common Good Church and other churches that came along, because what started with 40 groceries for 40 families, right? Pick up on Tuesday, pick up on Thursday. Churches drop off on Mondays and Tuesdays or in the mornings, right? So we could distribute in the afternoons. We ended up doing that 6 days a week for about 6 months, and it grew to 800 families. And over 3,000 people were being fed.
Wow.
Because God's church moved. And not only was it groceries, it was diapers, it was baby wipes, it was toothpaste, it was toilet paper, it was paper towels. I was in the lines actually handing out masks. I was going to grab my mask, which is because no one could find masks, but we had all these people in line that weren't wearing masks. But God's people dropped off masks so that I could hand them out in line so we could be safe as we serve people, and they could have a couple of extra so they could be safer at home.
Yeah.
So it was just an amazing thing. It wasn't easy because we had a lot of concerns raised by board members and others. Are you crazy? This is a stay-at-home order. How are we going to contain the spread of this disease if we're asking people to go into the grocery stores and shop?
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
But God got us through all of that and more. We have a community care fund, and it basically allows us, if you have a utility shut off or an eviction notice, we can give you $150 per family per year. And I know that doesn't sound like much at all, but it allows us to love on people and connect them to services and just practically give them some sense of support and care. Right. So we doubled that amount, and we took the lid off. Where we typically would distribute about $10,000 a year. We gave over $100,000 in that time, and none of that was budgeted. So on faith, we didn't know how we were going to pay for the groceries or for taking the lid off, and God just stepped in. We get way too much credit sometimes for stuff that God does. And even when we share His word to people, He did it. We're just bearing testimony to what God has done through His Son Jesus and all that. So, anyways, I'm rambling.
That's so good.
But it's been exhilarating, faith building. It's been challenging and taxing. We've had some real challenges and heartaches. As we've seen, our family, our extended family, and our community go through so much, and ourselves too, in our own personal lives. But God blesses it all.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and as you're sharing that, Randy, what I so appreciate about you and your organization, right, is, and I know kind of public facing, there's nothing explicit saying that you're a faith-based, Christian-based organization, but it's so evident and clear in the work that you do. And even as you're describing, how you even navigated and moved in this past season, so much of that is just spirit-led, right? And, I love on the website, right there on the front homepage, right, it says something about loving neighbor, right? And it's fitting that we're having this conversation, and here at Common Good, every fourth Sunday, we have what's called Love Your Neighbor Sunday. And I know you've already touched on this in many ways and just kind of these very practical examples, but just share a little bit of maybe more just explicitly of how you see kind of your faith informing the work that you do. And then this notion of what does it really mean to love our neighbor, right? I think a lot of people use that language and use those types of words, but that comes straight out of the scriptures, right? To love God and to love neighbor. And so, I think we couldn't have this conversation without kind of just chatting about that for just a minute or two. But, how does your faith inform kind of how you think about what does it even mean to love neighbor individually, but also just collectively as an organization as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. I was introduced to the whole idea of who Jesus was through my next door neighbor when they invited me to this outreach thing with literally a ventriloquist. So it was the ventriloquist that presented to me this as a grade schooler who this Jesus guy might be and all that stuff. And that was my first kind of awareness of, that there might be this God, and there might be this, his son Jesus who came down for me and all that. So that was my kind of the seed that was planted in me. And as I got baptized when I was 24, right? So when I think about my faith journey, maybe I was an embryo since grade school, but I really didn't kind of blossom, I guess, as such, into the point where I could be baptized till I was 24. So I still feel like I'm pretty early on in my faith journey, and really what it is for me is, receiving God's grace and his love and seeing him work is what it's about for me. And, the fact that, God did come to this broken world in his son Jesus, when he could have just stayed up there, but he wanted his kingdom here. He wanted to redeem the brokenness in this world. Yeah. And, for me as a young believer in my 20s and all that stuff, even as I was having a young family, it's like, yeah, I just want to be a good person. I just want to contribute, to make this world a quote better place. And it wasn't really until I started to act on my faith to where I really got a sense of how deep God's love is, and how real and how present and how active he is in this world right now, today. Yeah. And so that's what this has been for me. I grew up in the most impoverished area of Seattle, went to the worst performing schools in the district: Rainier View Elementary, South Shore Middle School, and Rainier Beach High School. You can look them up. And I looking back on that, I think God has just prepared me, and the story of my parents. My grandparents immigrated from Japan. My dad immigrated from China. My mom was interned during World War II. Their family lost everything in the Depression and then at the war. And there were a lot of things that were taken away from opportunities and barriers and all kinds of things to the Japanese side of my family and their brothers and sisters. And then the Chinese, side of my family. My dad, both of them were dirt poor when they grew up. They didn't know, but they couldn't actually buy a home in certain parts of Bellevue because the law prevented it. Right. And there were Japanese farmers whose lands got taken away, who would otherwise be owning some pretty darned expensive land in Bellevue, right? And so all of that has been deposited in me, right? And it all informs my faith, and it all informs, we're all made in God's image, and what is his justice, and what does it look like? Because it's supposed to be laced and covered in his love, right? And it's supposed to be redemptive, and all of these things. And so, how does my faith inform, my work here? When I got to know this organization, it was this idea of what would the church look like if it got outside the walls of the church. What would it actually look like? Because to me, growing up, it was, okay, going to church was going into this building and then coming out and feeling a little bit different, a little bit better, and then doing what I would do and then going back in, right? And so that intrigued me, about we're 15 years old as an organization, we're pretty young, but about 14 years ago, I started hearing this buzz about this thing, this nonprofit thing that was about that, right? So I ended up getting involved as a volunteer, first my wife, then me, then on this advocacy board, then on the board, and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I left this career to do this. From the time I got here, it's always been about being Christ-centered, because everything that I've ever known, everything that I've ever done that has been transformational, it's been because it's been about Jesus.
Wow.
It's been about his spirit. It's been about the truth of his word and putting the truth of his word in action and stretching so far beyond what you can think or do that you know that it's not you. I know this stuff isn't me. This is God. This is his love for humanity that's happening right here in this city. And it's so amazing and wonderful. So I don't know, I'm kind of rambling a little bit again, but that's how my faith informs this. So we pray, we reflect on scripture. We just urge, God, to help us discern. We urge him to open doors, and we ask him to take our plans and obliterate them and make them his. Right? We talk about being improvisational externally. To us, that means spirit-led. Right? We don't want to hold on to anything other than the reality of who Jesus is and that he's calling us to do stuff. That's why we're here.
I love it. That's so good. Randy, there's so much more that I would love to talk with you about. I know we're running short on time. So maybe last question to end this. Folks that are listening in, and many obviously in our community have already kind of come around and are supporting and volunteering at Jubilee Reach. But maybe for those who they're hearing about Jubilee Reach for the very first time, what are ways that someone could get involved? What are the different opportunities in terms of engaging and coming alongside of the work that you are already doing in the journey of really loving neighbor and coming alongside of those in our community?
The whole idea of kind of how we engage people to come alongside us is really, there needs to be a lot of mutuality in it, right? So we don't want to be directive, we want to be collaborative. And I would say, just from a philosophical perspective, we try to do everything uber relationally, right? So this broken world needs people to connect to it, needs Christians to connect to it, to love indiscriminately, to love lavishly, to be in relationships with people, and to be present, to be available, to just pour into the lives of people. And there are different ways to do that. At Jubilee Reach, you can serve on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays. You can serve on Sundays if you're Common Good Church. But we have opportunities here at the center if you like to tutor kids. If you like to teach ESO, during the day or during the evenings. The commitment. If you like to be with kids, you can do anything from homework club to coach a basketball practice or soccer or flag football. You can, if you have a hobby or a passion. We have leadership clubs. We had karate club, ukulele club, chess club, robotics, friendship clubs, all kinds of different clubs. It's all about, offering what God has deposited in you to this community, because there's a child that could be just like you in that way, that is not engaged in anything, before, during, or after school. That would love to meet you and spend time with you. So it's about those kinds of things. We have, we do groceries for families, so you can drop off bags of groceries, you can distribute, you can process beans and rice and detergent if you want to do that. There are just lots of different things that you can do. We have our gala and our community building events, and Common Good has always been plugged into those. But I'm happy to talk to anyone at Common Good if they have thoughts and ideas for ministries that don't exist yet. Knowing that we have relationships with the school district and the city of Bellevue, we have this community center here. God's planted us here, right? So yeah, just keep that in mind. And we don't want to be a kind of nonprofit or organization that says, here's what we do. These are your choices. Right? Although I just kind of said that. There's a ... and we'd love to have you fill that in.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Well, Randy, thank you again so much for making time today. Love you so much. Love what Jubilee Reach is doing in the community. And we are honored and privileged to be able to partner together and to come alongside. And yeah, we know that this continues to be a journey. We look forward to continuing the conversation and the dialogue and learning and growing alongside of you. So thank you so much for this. Hey, I'd love to, if it's okay, just say a quick word of prayer as we kind of close out our time, and just pray a prayer blessing over you and Jubilee Reach. Awesome. Let's do it.
Love that. Thanks, brother.
God, thank you so much for Randy. Lord, I thank you for the call that you have had on his life. I thank you for his story and his journey and how you have weaved it together in such a way that you have brought him to this specific place and time in history, and the work that he is doing to serve you, to serve your church, and to serve your people, God. And so we thank you for Jubilee Reach, this incredible organization that is doing so much for the community at large, and especially in serving those most vulnerable here on the Eastside and in Bellevue. Lord, I pray that the work that they are doing would continue to go forth in ways that would bear much fruit. That as you are transforming and healing lives, that we would see just a continued transformation in just these holistic ways of not just financially, but also spiritually and relationally and emotionally, and all the different ways that people are experiencing just your healing and your wholeness through the work that Jubilee Reach is doing and the countless volunteers that come alongside of them, God. And so we give you thanks for the work. We know that the needs continue to be immense and great. And so, God, I pray that you would continue to empower your church, as Randy shared, to be church that would go beyond the four walls of any building or service, and that would really have a heart to see how you are a God who has come and entered in to the brokenness of this world, so that you might bring hope and healing and light and redemption to it, God. And so continue to give Randy just wisdom and vision as how to continue to lead and move the organization forward. Thank you so much for their posture of just wanting to be listeners and learners of the community around them, and to entrust your spirit leading them to move in ways that perhaps they hadn't even envisioned or planned. But God, as they do so, that you would continue to do a good work in and through them. So thank you so much for this time, for this congregation, for this conversation. And I do pray for our congregation, those that are listening, that you would be continuing to water seeds that have been planted in our hearts, maybe even ideas right now that are being birthed right now in somebody's spirit, that they're saying, I want to put my faith into action. Lord, I pray that you would continue to do that work in each and every one of us. So we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
All right. Well, thank you again so much, Randy. Appreciate you. And hey, to all those tuned in and listening, I hope you're encouraged. I hope you're blessed. And I hope that you're inspired to consider how God might be moving in your heart and in your spirit to be a part of the work that God is doing, to love our neighbor well, and to work for the common good of the communities that we get to be a part of. So thanks so much. God bless. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon.